Including white, please. I guess you don't have to stand up if you don't want to.
Greetings, I'm Walter Hang. I live here in Ithaca, and I got interested in horizontal shale gas fracking concerns probably 4 years ago. I went to local meetings and I became persuaded, excuse me, that if I didn't do something about this issue, it was going to happen. For 12 years in my youth, I worked as a public interest advocate for New York Public Interest Research Group. For 35 years, my livelihood has basically been compiling government data, and that's how I basically challenged New York State's assertion that the regulation of oil and gas extraction had been perfectly fine, and the kinds of problems reported in other states simply didn't happen here. And I've organized citizens all across the state to make sure that if shale gas fracking is allowed in New York, they're going to be absolutely bulletproof safeguards adopted first.
I'm Bob Howard. I've been on the faculty here at Cornell in the Department of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology for 27 years. I'm the David R. Atkinson Professor of Ecology and Environmental Biology. I've worked on global change issues and oil pollution, gas pollution issues since the 1970s, pretty much continuously. It's part of my research program. I've served on several advisory committees to federal agencies, the National Academy of Sciences on those since the 1980s. I was on the Global Change Committee of the National Academy of Sciences in the 1980s as their methane expert. I came to think about fracking and shale gas about three and a half years ago, later than Walter. But I was driven to it by the claims that shale gas is a clean fuel with a low greenhouse gas footprint. That just didn't ring true based on what I knew. And after looking through the literature, I didn't see any literature supporting that. So we took it on as a research challenge, and Renee Santoro, Tony Ingraffi, and I published the very first peer-reviewed paper on that topic about 18 months ago, and I continue to work on it since.
So I'm Bill Pavelka, and by training I'm a research physicist and worked at Cornell for a number of years. I am a landowner in a rural part of Tompkins County and southeast corner called Town of Caroline. And I guess by way of disclosure, I would say that my potential bias is I have enough land in the town of Caroline that I could potentially earn substantial amount of money from leasing my land. But that would put me over on that side, you'll see me over here. So I became involved in this issue because the landmen that were coming to our door asking us to lease our property. And so I began, and my wife began educating ourselves about high-volume hydraulic fracturing and gas drilling in general. Went to some of the meetings, perhaps some of the same ones that Walter was at, and became convinced that this was not a good idea. We did not lease our land, and I've been spending my time since then educating the community around me about high-volume hydraulic fracturing.
Hello. My name is Nancy Schmidt, and my involvement in high-volume hydraulic fracturing began about a year ago when I realized that no one in my New York City neighborhood knew a thing about oil and gas. And since then, I've spoken to the New York Times, the Boston Globe, the League of Women Voters, Columbia University. I've appeared on NPR, CBS, and Fox News. And I'm really delighted to be here at Cornell today. The reason why I've had all those speaking opportunities is because I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil and Environmental Engineering from Rice University, which is in Houston, Texas. And because I went to school in Texas, I ended up being hired by the oil industry, and I worked as a petroleum engineer for 10 years in the offshore Gulf of Mexico and also the North Shore of Alaska. After that, I went and I got an MBA from the Harvard Business School, and I went to work for McKinsey and Company and worked all over North America for major oil and commodity chemical companies. So with that experience, I was able to look at what was going on in New York, and I felt like I could add something to the debate, so I got involved. As far as what I do for a living, I have my own investment company. It focuses on energy and natural resource investments, all publicly owned companies. I do not have any investments in companies that are doing business in New York. nor in investments in companies that are seeking to do business in New York. I do, yeah, sorry about that. Can you hear me if I'm here? Okay. I do have one conflict of interest, and she's sitting in the audience. She's a sophomore at the ILR school, Catherine Schmidt, so at any rate.
My name's Tom Shepstone. I'm from Pennsylvania, actually Homestead, Pennsylvania, which is the northeastern corner of the state. And I became involved in this first as a landowner because I have land that I leased to a company in 2008. I'm a planner by trade, and I do a lot of work in both Pennsylvania and New York. In fact, a little bit more in New York than Pennsylvania. And I've represented a number of counties and municipalities throughout New York State. And, I also serve, as a result of my involvement in this cause, I serve as a campaign director for Energy in Depth's Northeast Marcellus Initiative. I was basically doing this as kind of a side leg of my business for nothing, and was observed by the Energy in Depth folks when they wanted to launch a campaign to promote natural gas development in 21 counties of both New York and Pennsylvania. And so they asked me would I be willing to do that, and I do, as a consulting basis. But I believe very wholeheartedly, and that's what brought me to this thing, that this is so crucial to the economic development of rural Northeast of the United States. Rural New York, rural Pennsylvania are in deep, deep trouble without this kind of invigoration. And that's what brings me to this, that's what motivates me, and I'm very passionate about it.
My name's John Holko, and I own and operate a company called Landscape Resources. Background is a petroleum engineer, yes, Pennsylvania State University. I've been drilling oil and gas wells in New York State for 30 years, hydraulic fracturing, all of them. I have a lot of experience, and probably, as the table lays out, probably one of the few guys up here that's actually put holes in the ground. Conflicts, I'm conflicted. I mean, it is my business. I believe I've been doing it. I believe we can do it safely. And for 30 years, I've looked at opportunities in just about every energy field there is. And this is an energy opportunity second to none. And I believe that we can't pass this up. It's something as a country, as a society, as people. I know we can't pass it up. The question is, can we agree to do it? And this debate's a great opportunity to open this discussion.
Great.